Welcome to Fintech Frontiers, the podcast that delves into the leading edge of fintech, one founder, one company at a time. I'm Stephen Walsh, your host. I'm the CEO of Keeper Solutions, and we're helping fintech founders develop strategy and technology to design, scale their products into the market. But today, I'm super excited to be joined by Albert Owusu Asare. He's a CEO and a founder whose journey has brought him from Ghana to Goldman Sachs and now to leading Cadana in reshaping how global workers get paid. Welcome to the pod, Albert.
Yeah, thank you, Stephen. It's good to be here.
Great. Thanks for coming. And I know you helped build the Apple Card scale $1 billion business line, and now that you've moved on to building kind of payments infrastructure for emerging market. Albert, tell me how did you identify this this big problem? What is the big problem you identified, and how did you discover it?
Well, thanks, Steve. And again, thanks for having me. I just think it's nice to be able to share, these stories and also learn from you as well. But I think a good tie in to how I discovered the problem and what we're building is a little bit about myself. So, born and raised in Ghana, West Africa. I like to say my journey goes Ghana, Des Moines, Iowa, of all places.
All right.
New York, and then now DC. But
Cool.
17 years, first time on a plane, came here for college. I got a scholarship. And then over there in Grinnell, I met my wife. I also met my business partner. So I like to say I got the good deal over there.
Yeah, you covered all the bases.
Covered all the bases, my business partner and my life partner. But
Brilliant.
Out of that also came an internship opportunity to go to Wall Street and work for Goldman Sachs during the summer.
Excellent.
Doing that really just exposed me to finance and got very interested, got pulled in. And so I started out working for Goldman Sachs and stayed there for about 5 years. After that, we built interesting things, but I also joined a startup very early as a CTO called Isuzu, which we also grew that startup pretty well. So why do I mention all of this? I see myself as a poster child for the good old American dream, right?
Yeah, that's what's coming to mind. You're living the dream, literally.
Exactly. And so just in sort of exploring that more and thinking about what lies ahead, there's just this thought that, I am not an anomaly, right? In a sense that there are brilliant people around the world, people that look like me, people that are from where I'm from. And so there's just real passion to say, how can we make sure people can live their version of the American dream right where they are without having to migrate? And so that's where this journey was born from, which is how can we make sure that people can get jobs? And when they get jobs, then hopefully paying them shouldn't be the hardest part of the problem. So that's where Cadana was born.
Wow. Well, I think that's really a story that's got to resonate, in this day and age, because we see that we seem to be entering nearly a post-global era. And I think if you can facilitate people to live the American dream, but not have to root themselves out of their home communities, and that they can get paid reliably, then what's not to like?
Yeah, 100%. And, embedded in that is a few core problems that we try to solve with our infrastructure. We did a little bit of a survey just about 2 years ago where we interviewed remote workers in countries like Nigeria, Brazil, Argentina, Philippines. And we found, Stephen, on average, these workers are taking care of 6 other family members, right? And so when you think about these markets and you think about the influx of dollars coming into the markets, is impactful, not just for the worker, but also impactful for the communities around them. But the other thing that we found was the velocity of the money getting there really matters. And I'll explain. When you have 6 dependents and there's just school fees that needs to be paid, or a family member is sick, a transaction going through 5 to 7 business days over the Swift network, or a transaction that ends up eating sometimes upwards of even 10% of
Yeah,
your income, it's very impactful, right?
it is.
Downstream. And so
Yeah,
possible problems we're trying to solve for these workers is not just helping them be impactful in their communities, but actually increasing the velocity of money and also
yes,
increasing the share of their hard-earned money that they
yeah,
get, right? And so, Stephen, these are some
yes.
of the bigger problems that we noticed, and that's why we've built the company the way we've built it.
Brilliant, brilliant. And I'm like when I'm hearing you, facilitating transactions quickly and cheaply and reliably. I mean, I'm thinking stablecoin must be in the equation there somewhere.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And we're very excited about the recent news of the Genius Act passing. And I do think that it's waking a lot of folks up to what stablecoins could be. But for a business like us, we're 4 years old. We've
Yes,
used stablecoin infrastructures literally since we started, right? And
yes,
and those are just for corporate treasury. Our ability to move money to 60 plus countries and counting means that we've built local integrations and local FX networks. So we need to move the money quickly. So we've been
yes,
using stable coins as a way to move money from one
yeah,
location to the other. But the thing that I think people are waking up to might be a little less of the corporate strategy aspect of stable coins, but the individual, right? So all of a sudden, we've now had this internationalization of these digital dollars. And that means that if you live in a very high inflation country as a worker, you can now say, I'm going to just hold, money into USDC.
right.
And what we're enabling these workers to do is as and when they need the money is when they convert it, right,
Oh,
into local
great.
currency. So stable coins are great
Yes,
and
yes,
impactful for payments businesses because it helps us be efficient, but
right.
it's very impactful for the end user
Yeah,
who is now able to have access to a global currency like the dollar
right.
to
Yes.
be able to hedge against some of these issues that come up.
Okay, so you're hedging against local inflation, or that some of those countries that the remittances are going to are experiencing high inflation.
100%.
Yeah, and I'm just wondering. I know that the Trump administration has got a kind of let's say a weak dollar policy, so there has been that as well, but it's been more of a kind of steady trend. I think it's 15% since the start of the year against euro at least. But does the strength of the dollar kind of cause kind of different nuances in the payment flows as well, or the behavior?
It does. I mean, but the way you look at it is payments businesses have to be very sophisticated in how they manage global liquidity. And sometimes it means they need to really understand the local markets that they're serving very well.
Yeah.
And so there's that impact. But the other thing that I try to emphasize, especially to my American friends and my Western friends, is that the world exists on a very relative basis. Whatever you think is happening, for example, in the last 2 years, we've had inflation in places
Yes.
like the UK and the US, and everybody goes crazy. Well, relative to the rest of the world, those numbers were very, very
Yes.
minimal, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so that's the way that we look at the dollar and these other currencies is that, there's this effect, and usually the effects are more pronounced in the other
Yes.
markets. And so we just try to really understand those local contexts well, and then we're able to navigate them accordingly.
Great. Well, Albert, I must say that your theory of relativity has certainly given me some perspective.
Yeah.
Cool. Um, So, where are you on the journey now? You're 4 years in. So, where did you start off in terms of product and market, and how has that progressed?
Yeah. And then maybe this is a good time to also talk about who we serve.
Yes, I'd love to hear that. Yeah.
Our vision is to build a Stripe, but specifically focused on the global labor economy, right?
Yes.
There are a lot of cross-border payments companies out there, but
Yep.
they are serving in a horizontal capacity. They help e-commerce companies, imports, exports, but we
Yep.
are specifically in that intersection of payments and payments specifically to workers around the world. And so we naturally started out with, yeah, go ahead, Steven.
So global payroll, or would,
Yes.
yeah. And could that be, people that might be working in the maritime industry, or people that are like, what's a typical, what would really be a typical kind of customer or user of
Right.
yours
So we don't serve the end business. We actually serve platforms. And
platform?
so our customers tend to be freelancer marketplaces that are trying to pay these folks from around the world. It could
Great.
also be a SaaS HR company
Yeah.
that is domestic, say to the US and the UK, but now is expanding internationally and they need help with
Right.
payments and compliance. So we are built for platforms, just like the way that Stripe is built
Yes.
for other platforms. We just focus on the global workforce use case.
Super. So in that sense, you're a kind of a B2B to C, in that your customers are platforms, but that you're facilitating that kind of multi country payments to yeah.
Yes, on the one hand, we're giving the platform infrastructure, which is payments. And then on the other hand, we're responsible for delivering financial services to the end user that platform is serving.
Yes.
Another stakeholder is the government, because in addition to paying the net salaries to workers, we also help facilitate payments to to the statutory payments to the governmental bodies. So this is maybe a good uh, time to talk a little bit about just the journey. When we started out, we had to really understand the local labor laws in all of these countries, but we
Right.
did that in a very manual way. Fast forward to today on our journey, in terms of products, we've built our own AI capabilities that allows us to basically index what is the local labor law in Philippines,
Yes.
what changed in Brazil, how do I remit taxes to the government in Kenya. We
Yes.
really built all of this now through AI that allows us to detect changes even
Yes.
faster than 2 years ago, where we had to
Right.
use a lot of manual input and a lot of manual work. So the product has evolved since then.
Mhm.
Our customers have also gotten bigger, some of
Yeah.
those that we started with. I'd like to say we're at that adolescent stage of the game where we're not quite an adult yet, but we're also not quite a toddler. Is exactly where we are.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that seems to be the case. All right. And so have you kind of built out kind of regulatory integration and stablecoin off ramps on a kind of country by country basis, and that you're keeping them live, and that you're
Yep.
holding that complexity and making those services available through to the platforms via that?
Yeah, Stephen, you're exactly right. When you take a typical cross-border company, this is the secret. I'm just going to tell you how their business works.
Oh,
Okay.
great. I'm all ears.
They would take a payment from a UK or US business, and they would figure out what regional partner they can use behind the scenes. Let's say the payment is going to Africa. They'll find a regional partner that they integrate with. The problem is that regional partner also has sub-regional partners that they integrate with. And
Yeah.
then all the way down to you get to the country level. So what
Yeah.
does this mean, Stephen? That means the transaction is going through all of these hops, which
Yes.
exhibits itself in terms of delays. If something goes wrong and the customer says, where's my money? Now you have to figure out which of these layers the money is stuck in. Of course, everyone is taking a share of the margins, which
Yeah.
means the customer ends up getting less. Our approach is a little different. We have incorporated in a bunch of countries. We go directly to the local switches in some of those countries, and we also integrate with local partners. And so the flow goes, you move the money to Cadana, and we have smart routing capabilities that figures out which of our local partners directly we go to. And
Right.
so that is the way that we've set up our infrastructure. And then on the compliance basis, again, there aren't a lot of countries that have automated that process. So we have really created an abstraction layer in terms of our global payroll tax engine. Our customers integrate into that, and we do all of the dirty work on the local country level through our subsidiaries. So that's the way it
Right.
works there.
So there's kind of withholding taxes and
Correct.
local payroll and all of that.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
the thing that most people don't understand is, when you think about the global labor market, there's trillions of dollars that are being paid, and everyone is focused on the net pay, which is what ends
Yes.
up in Steven's bank account.
Yeah.
And we are also positioning ourselves to be the winner of how you actually do the other 40%, which is the money that goes to the governments around the world. So
Right.
that's really what our
Yeah.
differentiative mode is. We're going to build those direct integrations with governments and regulatory and revenue authorities around the world so that we can streamline those withholding payments, not just in the UK or the US, but also to about 100 plus countries around the world.
Okay. And that sounds amazing. Sounds like an awful lot. You've taken on a lot there, and yeah, I can see where where AI would be able to point it at different jurisdictions, monitor the environment. Would most of the platforms that you use, is it kind of independent contractors rather than employees that they're dealing with?
We see both. We see
Both. Yeah.
both.
Yeah.
Yes. So usually people discover folks through an independent contractor relationship.
Yeah.
And then they say, hey, that developer from Nigeria is really awesome. How could we make them an employee and pay benefits and treat them just like we would our engineer in Amsterdam? And so they would usually start as an independent worker, and we see that transition eventually to the employee. And that's where we want to be able to help these platforms, facilitate that as well for their clients.
Cool. So yeah, excellent. And then, so how did you get this far? Like, have you gone through the typical kind of seed funding and that to fund the development of the product and the
Yeah.
market?
Yeah, we've raised a total of about almost $8 million since we started the business, and we've been able to also grow pretty profitably throughout that time. So we
Great.
we were luckily disciplined more than a lot of the companies that grew up in the era that we came in.
Good.
Yeah, our business is also honestly a cash light business, meaning if you're able to really build these connections, you can actually have a high margins. And it's just all about efficiencies. And just like I mentioned with those middle layers, the more you
Yes.
can take those inefficiencies out, you can capture
Yeah.
a lot of the
Yes.
margins for ourselves. So we're still
Yes.
on the journey of trying to scale to 100 plus countries. And that would mean
Yeah.
we likely have to do another capital injection into the company. So we're still on that fundraising journey to potentially do a Series A or Series B later down the line. But that's exactly where we are today. We're a seed
Well,
stage
yeah.
company.
Great. Well, that'll keep you busy courting the investors and keeping them informed and so you've then used this investment basically to build out your position in the market. Super. Um, and do you have some kind of key stats that you like to quote, to give an indication at the level of uptake that you have currently?
Yeah, yeah. So today we're processing over $1 billion annually in terms of just our payments capabilities. Again, our ambitions are very, very large. There are trillions
Yeah.
of dollars that are being processed. So this is minuscule to that. But again, that is a good indicator of just how far we've been able to come in just a short number of years. We operate in about 100 plus countries in terms of being able to push money to those countries.
Yeah.
And so that's also a good indicator. And then for a lot of our customers, we sometimes are able to save them even upwards of $100,000 annually because we go in and we find a lot of the inefficiencies. So we're super excited. One common advice that is given to a lot of young startups is to focus. And I
Yes.
think that is predominantly very, very good advice. But there's
Agree.
cohorts of companies like ours where our literal value proposition is directly proportional to the number of markets that we serve. And so there's always this constant need to expand
Yes.
and go into more geographies. And so we've integrated so far today with about 46 local partners around the world. We manage all of those integrations, the funds flows ourselves. And again, that is also growing by the month. those are just a little things that we like to point out. But in terms of value driven, 87% of all of our payments occur in under 5 minutes. 87%.
Super.
And, that is coming from a place
Impressive.
where folks used to
In
get
5 minutes
paid
globally. Yeah.
globally,
Impressive.
5 to 7 days. And now that's shrinking to about 5 minutes. So that's also a pretty big deal for our customers as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And that I suppose that allows them to take a quantum leap in the service that they can offer to their consumers. And then may I ask are you building all of this in-house, or what's your approach to design innovation, your product roadmap?
Yeah, we are very pragmatic about just the way that we do things. We have a North Star of what we need to achieve. And so in a lot of cases, we partner. A place that we partner very well in is identity verification.
Yes.
We are still, maintaining bank programs. So we need to do OFAC checks,
Yeah.
KYB, KYC.
Yeah.
And when you have 100 plus countries, you couldn't possibly build a way to identify passports in all these 100 countries. So where it makes sense, we usually are partnering with folks who are experts in that.
Yes.
So that's just one example. With payments, we're also always partnering with different folks. But in terms of the core product, I'm a software engineer by training. My co-founder is a software engineer by training.
Great.
And so we are able to today build a lot of our core products in-house, obviously with the help of things like Cursor and AI for code development.
Yeah.
We've seen an acceleration there as well. So we're
Yeah.
pretty pragmatic, and we just let the KPIs and the user guide us to see how we make the build versus buy decisions as well.
Yes. Excellent. Very good. And like for the KYC or the KYB, is it more that's taking place at the level where you're onboarding new platforms, or is it on that B2C element that they need to do some KYC so that
It's
they can onboard people to receive?
Yeah,
Or
it's on both. It's on
both?
both actually, because when a platform uses Cadana, they are usually onboarding their end businesses, and
Yeah.
they need to be able to KYB those end businesses. So we help them with that. And then when that business eventually through Cadana pays the worker, we need to make sure the worker is legit, that they haven't been flagged on any sort of terrorist list
Yeah.
or something like that. And so
Right.
we do a lot of that transaction monitoring to detect those things as well.
Excellent. So that's a lot of knowing your customers and buyers right there.
Yes.
And I suppose this then leads on to the whole AI. I'd be interested just to hear, we think AI seems to be affecting everybody in all sorts of different dimensions in different ways. Can you see, first of all, at the business layer, are you seeing effects that AI is having in the marketplace? And we can get on to innovation and other AI use cases then.
Yeah. I mean, at the core of the matter for us as a global worker payments company is this elephant in the room, right, Stephen? Which is, are people going to hire as many people as they used to from the past?
Yeah.
And so that's a fair question. It's a question that our customers and our clientele grapple with as well. Our perspective is just like every other technology innovation. We're going to obviously see some displacements, but overall, we think that the TAM is going to expand and enlarge, and people are going to do more exciting and incredible things with the AI tool.
Yeah.
And so we still think there's a huge opportunity. One of the things that we are excited about, particularly as an infrastructure company, is that, people talk about agentic commerce, which is AI agents basically transacting, right?
Yeah.
Just like humans
Yes.
do. But you could almost imagine in the future an agent that wants someone to, I don't know, build them a website, and that agent hires someone out of Ghana. Well, that agent would want to make sure that they're not breaking some statutory rule in that location. And so
Yes.
we still think there's broad applicability for APIs and infrastructure to also, continue to grow in an agentic world as it pertains to human hiring as well, if that makes sense.
I think it does. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's good to get a glimpse into, you know, certainly it's interesting to hear that that you're thinking about and that your clients are thinking about, the hiring human dynamics, how that's changing, but also this agentic marketplace world that's beginning to emerge, and how that may affect things. I suppose, like my company, Keeper Solutions, like we help fintech founders to design, develop, and AI enable their platforms. And so we're seeing it kind of bifurcated between the brand new, the early stage startups nowadays are building their platforms on, AI native conversational interfaces and the various tools, and they're probably incorporating a lot of AI tools for software design and development, as are indeed the scale ups. But that the investors are wanting those early stage startups now to be built all in AI, also have product MVP and clients before they'll invest, so that the founders are having to get further. But there are the tools available, but they've got to be smart that they can get further down the line before they can get that seed investment. So we see that's something that's kind of changed the investor expectations, the milestones, and how the founders are going about their business in the early stage. Now, in the later stage, in the scale ups, then they're out there in the market. They've got the revenue streams, their clients, their reputation, their branding. But is there then the risk that some other players who might know the market, intimately, might say, hey, we're just going to go and spin up a brand new startup with all these kind of AI agentic frameworks and try and disrupt it again. So we we think that there's a piece. I think another dynamic is if you've got a busy platform doing payments all over the world or whatever it is, you're close to the business as usual, and maybe that the founders might need to have that time and space to get their heads out of what's going on right in front of them, and
Yeah.
to see, hey, is there another AI transformation that we need to be doing now, or could somebody eat our lunch? And we're seeing some of that kind of stuff going around in the market. I'd just be interested to hear what you think about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's exactly right. It's almost like the classic innovator's dilemma type of issue where I think what we by and large see just with our conversations is everyone at the very least recognizes that we're maybe at an inflection point in technology. And so it is still top of mind to figure out, okay, should I be using this tool? And if I don't, like, in which ways can I be disrupted? And if I want to, what's the best way to go about it? So, Steve, we definitely are looking at it. But, at the end of the day, we also are very conscious of the North Star, right? And the North Star is always the customer and the value that we are
Yes.
providing to the customer. And I just think
Yes.
sometimes, folks lose sight of that
Yeah.
because there's this new shiny thing that
Yeah.
needs to be somehow part of the narrative. Thankfully for us, we don't feel like those things are at odds. We do think that a way to serve our customers better can also be through doubling down right on some of these AI. But I do agree with you that ability to zoom out can be sometimes challenging
Yeah.
just to really make sure you're plugged in to all the things that are happening.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, that makes a whole lot of sense. And I think having a North Star is so important, whether it's, focus on creating value for the customer, or what works for the customer, or focusing on protecting trust with the customer while innovating, or getting that balance right. Because as you say, there's so much stuff. I think some people are getting a future shock that the rate of change is so great. But at times like that, if you can just reflect on what is your North Star, what are your guiding principles, and stay focused on them, and then just treat everything else as this is technology, and then there's also noise. But if you keep coming back to what your core culture is and your beliefs and your North Star, then that can help you separate the noise to signal and, keep focused on creating value. And as you say, if it is doubling down on some more new technology and creating new value, I think being so close to the market, being in the market as well, that you can start to see how expectations, how needs, and how new capabilities can start to interact. Maybe that
Yes.
you can do that better if you're able to keep nimble as well with, sticking to, I suppose, sticking to your principles, but bringing in new values as best you can.
Yeah, exactly. I think you put it best. So that's what makes our seat challenge. And as sort of founders, you need to make sure that you are operating very well today, but you also
Yeah.
need to keep your eye on tomorrow as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of tomorrow, then, Albert, could you tell me, like, what does the next 12 months hold, and what are the biggest challenges that you can see in the year ahead?
Yeah, I mean, for us, it's just always growth.
Yes.
We are very aggressive. We want to grow, grow, grow. And so we're always thinking through go-to-market strategies, different types of partnerships that could unlock new growth for us. So that's really where
Yeah.
the bulk of the mind share is. But in the
Yes.
next 12 months for us would be growing our revenues, going out there potentially in the market to maybe fundraise and,
Yeah.
getting more and more customers onboarded.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, that's exciting. And can you see then in the longer term where's all this going?
Yeah. In the longer term, I think that, look, the facts are that the world is increasingly global now. If you watch a Netflix show tonight, chances are someone in Nigeria or Buenos Aires is watching the same show. Folks are using things like Uber, not just in the UK and the US, but using it everywhere else as well. You see a lot of people traveling just for vacation, or even for me, for example, just to get an education somewhere. So in the long run, I think that globalization is, in my opinion, is the genie's out of the bottle. The world is
Yeah.
only going to get more and more interconnected. And so what
Yes.
we are really excited about is how do we enable cross-border payments in the most cheap way and the fastest way. And we're specifically focused on the intersection of that and compliance heavy industries, right?
Yes.
Payroll is a compliance heavy industry. You have to
Yeah.
pay your statutory payments. And so
Yes.
that's where we think we're focused on. So we're
Yeah.
we're certainly doubling down on being able to help people get paid, but we're
Yeah.
also super excited about the 40% that I mentioned, which is how do you allow these governmental agencies around the world to accept payments in the most innovative and efficient way as possible. And we believe we can be the de facto rails that essentially powers the global labor economy um, in the future.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, it's very exciting, and I think you're bringing a lot there, and I think it'll be exciting in times ahead. Thanks so much for taking me through the Cadana journey, and I really enjoyed hearing about that. Look forward to seeing how things go into the future.
Yeah, no, Steven, thank you so much for having me. We're always excited to chat, and folks can always find us at our website, cadanapay.com. I'm very
Yes.
active on LinkedIn, and so just always happy to meet and discuss these topics as well.
Great. DM on the LinkedIn or drop into the website, yeah?
Yes, exactly.
Great. All right.
Cool.
Cool stuff. Thanks very much.
Thank you.